This is Barry Malphurs. I'm the Policy Committee Chairman and the Vice Chairman of the Commission for the Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs. This is our monthly meeting for November. I'm going to call the meeting to order at, I guess it'd be 3:02. And I'm going to ask Ms. Lori Manus to read the statement of announcement, please.
A meeting notice announcing the date, time, and place of the November 9th, 2021 Policy Committee meeting was distributed November 8th, 2021 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who have requested notification. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Central Administrative Office and on the website. The public has been notified that accommodations such as interpreters, mobility assistance, or other assistance will be provided to individuals with disabilities and special needs if requested in advance.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the invocation, which I'll give very quickly. Dear Lord, thank you for allowing us to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to go through the policies of the disabilities and special needs of South Carolina. We hope and pray that whatever we will do here today will be pleasing to you in your sight, as that's what we are here to do. We pray for each person that is listening, that they will continue their desire to help those with disabilities and do what is best not only for those with disabilities but for the taxpayers of the state. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
The next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. I think everybody here knows that this committee meeting is run by under the unanimous consent rule of Robert's Rules of Order, which is on page 48 of the 12th edition. So that means that if I don't hear any objection as I move down this list, that we move forward without motions and seconds. So if I don't hear an objection in a few seconds, I'm going to adopt the agenda as written. Okay, the agenda is adopted as written. David, you can hear me right still?
Yeah.
Gary, you can hear me right still?
Yeah, can you guys still hear me? Randall,
Yeah.
I can hear you fine.
I may have
Can
to.
y'all hear Gary in there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure, since I'm doing this unanimous consent, we got to make sure people can object. All right. Or those on the committee. I mean, anyway, moving on. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the next item on the agenda is the approval of the summary notes of, which is basically the minutes of the meeting of the last meeting, which we're calling summary notes because they're not actually minutes, they were actually summaries, which is what all the committees do. So if I don't hear an objection to that, I'm going to approve that as written. I read it and it seems fine to me. So I'm going to say, if I don't hear something in 3 seconds, we're going to approve that. Okay, that's approved as written. The next item on the agenda is the new business, which is, and the first and only item under new business is for us to look over again the executive limitations policy. And the primary purpose of that is because we have a new executive director, which we're very proud to say that everybody I think in here knows by now is Michelle Fry, Dr. Michelle Fry, I should say, excuse me, who happens to be at the front of the table over there, it looks like to me, which is very good. But there is one thing that I'd like to consider, and I emphasize the word consider, that one sentence we might want to add to that policy, and it would be on page 4 under the I gotta find what page. I'm sure it's page 4.
You're on tab 2.
I'm on the executive limitation policy, which is on tab 2, yeah. And I'm on page 4, and number C, letter C. And where it talks about what the executive director can spend without authorization. And I was just going to ask that we consider adding one sentence that says that after where it says position exceeding 200,000, you just add a sentence at the end of that would say that any expenditure that would be over $100,000 with $100,000 or more would be, she could still spend, but it would be at the next, she would inform the commission at the next available opportunity about that expenditure if it was $100,000 or more. And that's just for transparency purposes, to try to get things a little more transparent on this policy. Is the only reason I bring it up. And I just want to know if anybody had an objection to that.
Well, I guess the question that I have.
In other words,
go ahead, David.
no, go ahead, Gary.
No, please go ahead.
Is C? How had we had it done? Was it a greater amount? I can't recall.
Well, no. Well, C just says that she can spend up to 200,000 without authorization, and she still can spend up to 200,000 without authorization. It's just that I thought we should say that if it was 100,000 or more, that she should inform the commission at the next available opportunity, so that we would know.
All right, maybe I'm just a little confused, because it was about 1.5 years or 2 years ago we had discussed the disclosure requirement that every quarter, I believe it was, the monies under 500,000 had been spent. I thought it was 500,000, but I could be wrong about that. Had to be disclosed in a quarterly, basically a statement or a disclosure to the commission.
That was just, David. That's only for whenever that was really only for whenever the contracts are over 200,000 for the providers. This is for any expenditure that the executive director can spend without authorization from the commission. This is just the executive director policy or nothing else. This is the executive limitations is the executive director policy basically that we have, and that's what it. And number C is what it says now. And like I say, I was just going to add that one sentence, but we don't have to add the sentence. I just would prefer that. I mean, we can just ask her to do that. It would just be better if it was in the policy. But we can just ask her to do that and see it. And I don't think you would have an objection to having it in there, would you, Michelle?
No, I have no objection to doing an update of anything over 100 but under 200,000. Need to do it.
Okay.
And I guess my only concern is so in my time on the commission, the original number was 250,000. We lowered that down to $200,000, and it's consistent throughout that paragraph that our executive director kind of knows that 200,000 is the number that sort of triggers off all of these reporting and other requirements that we have. Mm-hmm. From a consistency standpoint, I kind of like that. The other issue is $100,000 doesn't buy what it used to in salary, right? I mean, more and more we're seeing individuals who are qualified to work at the central office, if they're not, if they're not clerical staff, essentially, that their salaries are going to probably be in excess of that. So it might run down into a granular level that I think the purpose of this was to focus on high level positions and the big issue that was when it was first brought was the creation of a new division by Dr. Buscemi back in the day. There was sort of that just sort of popped out of the organizational chart. And the issue was she creating a new division or just reassigning assets and things like that? I mean, that's sort of where this first came into play, is where we set it at 200,000, and that was sort of the number was finished. So, how granular are we getting in our oversight of the executive director making a hiring of a HR person who might be as a professional, might come in at $115,000 and things like that? That's my thought on it. It's a little bit too granular at 100,000. That's why we set it at 200,000 as opposed to 250,000 even before. That's my thought. Am I violently opposed to it? No. Do I think it's necessary? No.
Well, the only thing I would say is that I'm not saying she cannot spend up to 200,000. I'm just saying that at the next available opportunity she has, she should let us know that she did it. That's all I'm saying, because we've had problems with people not letting us know in the past that money was spent that we didn't realize was spent. And that's the only reason. I mean, we could even say 150, but I just think that there should be some level under 200,000 that she should be able to tell us how much money she spent, even if after she spent it, even if it is after she spent it, is fine. But I think 200,000 is plenty enough to let us know what somebody spends before they spend it.
Barry, C in this one, present to the commission for approval prior to implementation. So in that case, the commission is giving approval. What I was speaking of earlier was the requirement that said that under that, whatever the number was, and I thought it was 500,000. Gary, you just said it was 250. Whatever the number was, that was the transparency issue that was supposed to be presented to the commission every quarter, so that we would know where all the monies have gone, and one couldn't simply spend hundreds of thousands of dollars under the limit and the commission not have some information about it. Now, is this what is being addressed here? What I'm talking about, the transparency?
It actually, you could consider it a part of it, but really what you are addressing directly has to do with contracts and what contracts that we enter into, and that the providers, the money we spend on providers. That's what the over 200,000 threshold is.
The transparency thing for under 500, I thought, again, I repeat, I thought under 500, and I stand to be corrected, that was required, but the key thing was a quarterly disclosure to the commission.
Sorry, David, just to clarify, the current policy says the commission will receive a quarterly report of provider contract amendments below the required $200,000 individually approved threshold. So again, for consistency, we set that at 200,000 as the threshold, not 500, just to clarify for you.
Okay.
That's
all right. Thank you. Now that was the quarterly disclosure thing, right?
Correct.
For contracts.
For contracts. So, but this that is in front of us now that we're speaking about is not just contracts, right?
This would be anything she spent money on. Yes. This would be anything the executive director approved to spend money on.
Okay, because I thought the quarterly disclosure was an in totality. I thought it was not. I didn't think it was limited. I thought it was anything the money was spent for. We got to see on a line item basis. The commission got to see if they were interested or could fathom it or ask questions about it. Line item for where money had gone that had been spent by the director. That's
what this is for, David. That's really not that. I know what you're saying. You think it was, but it wasn't. That's what this policy is for right here. What the executive director spends is what this policy is.
All right, so this has no quarterly disclosure element to it, right?
No, it does not. It's
okay.
What this says is she spends up to 200,000, and she cannot. I mean, she can spend $199,000. Well, actually, she can spend 200,000 because it says exceeding 200,000. So actually, she could spend 200,000 and not let us know anything But if it goes to 201,000, she has to inform the commission before she can spend it. And all I was trying to do was add a layer of transparency, you would call it, I guess, to say that you couldn't not spend the money, but that you had to let us know that you did spend the money. That's all I'm saying.
And
Yeah,
to be clear, that section C talks about positions, programs, and divisions that result in the cost of the positions exceeding $200,000. So C is specifically referring to hirings, essentially. And again, having been there when this sort of came up, the issue was the creation of a division by moving a bunch of people around. So there weren't supposedly new positions, but there was the creation of an entirely new division with a different budget, right? That's what this was designed for, and I think that's what this addresses. It's not any spending. Subsection C is talking about essentially personnel hirings.
Well, then maybe we should have a D. Then
Well,
maybe it shouldn't be under C. But I was trying to get
well,
to anything that they spent, because you're right. We did have a problem with that, and we had another problem with it with our most recent executive director before this one.
I think it's a little more expansive than just positions. C talks about correctly positions, then comma programs and or divisions. I'm not sure what divisions means, but that result in the cost of the. It does then then the cost of the positions exceeding 200,000.
Right.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. Positions, programs, or divisions.
I guess the real question is, do we want to leave it at 200,000 like it is now, or do we want to make any amount of money? I mean, she can spend up to 200,000 anyway, but do we want to ask her to tell us anything formally? Now, informally, I'm going to ask her right now to do it, but I'm saying formally, do we want to put anything down there that says, is there any amount of money under 200,000 that you want to let us know about even after you spend it? That's the question.
Well, Gary.
Yes.
Let me ask you this now. If the commission wanted to just see where all the money had gone, what is the director doing with the money? Whether she spent a mere $50,000 or a lot more, $150,000. I don't want to find out from somebody in charge of the budget that a director had spent cumulatively $12 million last year, under 200,000, without us knowing about it. So that's why in the quarterly report idea, I was propelling the concept. Just show us where the money is gone, and I don't comprehend how there could possibly be pushback on disclosure to the commission for where it's just a line item where all monies have gone. Then, if you want permission at some level, like C, where it says present to the commission for approval, and then it defines the positions of exceeding 200,000. That's fine, but where does the commission, on some basis, monthly, quarterly, whatever, get to see what the executive director has spent line item by line item? Where is that in the policy?
It isn't. It is not.
Well,
that's why I was going to say 100,000.
I don't understand why there's a difficulty in line iteming, which I thought had been done, and I'm told that no, it didn't cover what I thought it was going to do. Simply, the responsibility we as commissioners would have of at least having before us the knowledge, and this is transparency, of where the monies have gone the executive director has spent. There shouldn't be some black box that any commission, any director has, where potentially millions of dollars cumulatively could be spent. We don't know about it.
Well, supposedly if it's over 200,000 in one fiscal year, we're supposed to know about it. But that's just one expenditure. That's not.
No, that's one expenditure. I just gave you the example of 150 or 50. So she or he does that 150 times year to year. There's no disclosure. So where does the commission find out at least find out. That's simply a transparency issue. That's given glandular, as Gary used the word. I like that word. That's not a permission thing, but it is a responsibility on our part to know where the money's going. I'd sure hate to for the governor to say, why didn't you know where that cumulative $12 million went? And as well, we have no requirement that we be told about it.
So, man, I think the breakdown though here comes. You look, so 99% of our budget comes about via these contracts, right? So that is covered, and then we had a separate thing that related to hirings, right? Salary-based things, which were not covered under Section A, because the vast majority of the expenditures of the agency fall under A. Contracts, right? Consulting contracts or any other contracts, procurement contracts, all that stuff falls under A, and that's where we are getting that, I think, David, as it applies to 99.9% of the agency's business. I mean, the finance people can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I think that's where that came in, and I do think we get that. Again, the only thing I'm saying is the other question is, what else can the executive director spend money on that's not covered, that isn't have to be required under contract, or hiring? There's not a whole lot.
I'm not sure what else you can spend money on either, but that's what I'm trying to get across, is that I don't want there to be something that says, well, I didn't realize I couldn't do this, or I didn't realize. That's why I was going to say any expenditure over 100 would acknowledge, because so that we wouldn't have a problem with trying to figure out what else you could spend it on. We have solved the contract problem. We understand that, and that is, I wouldn't say it was 99% of what she would spend money on, but I think it's probably, I mean, it's a high percentage. It's way over 50, but clearly we've solved that problem in A, and that's right. And we even through the finance committee, we approve any contract now.
Gary,
but there's other things other than contracts.
Chairman and Gary, and I don't know who else is on, but besides the three of us, are there any other committee members on? I'll address them also. I didn't mean to leave anybody out.
No, there's nobody else here commission-wise.
Well, to speak to the issue of transparency, obviously, if there are very little things that are left over, if 99.9% is already covered, then my singular concern about disclosing would be a very short list and very easy to keep such a list. It would basically be 5 items of $25,000 and $70,000 or whatever. And you look at those, you ask a few questions, that's the end of story. It doesn't become a major issue if suddenly something happens where some expenditures take place. We don't know about it. We're called by somebody to try to explain this, a member of the press or the governor or a member of the legislature or whatever, and we have no knowledge of it. So what I would like to see, and if we don't want to bring it up here, I'll bring it up in full committee and discuss it. I'll be glad to do that, to simply add a sentence that all expenditures that up to the 200,000 number must be disclosed every quarter to the full commission. And if we don't want to put it in into this,
That's where it would be. This is where it would be, David.
I agree. This is where it should be. I'm just saying, if we're going to put something like that, it probably should have its own. It shouldn't be under C, because C is.
Well, that's fine. It can be a D. We can have a D and an E. So it can be under D. Well, actually, it should be under E, because it would be after the D right there. It'd be under E, and it would just say what David just said, which is that every quarter he would disclose what she had spent for those that wanted to see it.
That were under the $200,000. That
was under the 200,000 threshold, yeah. Which she can spend, but we're just asking her to inform us of it. Is all we're doing.
Sure.
Do you got that? I think that's fine, David. I was going to say 100, but that's fine. To say all expenditures, fine with me, because like you say, contracts are covered and other things in here are covered, but not everything is covered. So, but that covers everything. So, do we understand what we're doing, Lori?
Yes.
I think
Dr. Fromm wanted to ask a question.
Just for clarification, I don't have some of the institutional history. These, the description of anything over whatever amount, say 25,000, is that interpreted to mean if it's not in the budget as presented, or is it every single expenditure by DDSN beyond 25,000? I just want to
It
have
would
a
be every expenditure beyond 25,000. It wouldn't be, it wouldn't be not in the budget. It has nothing to do with the budget. It has to do with letting us know what has been, just informing us of what's been spent. Of over 200, of over whatever amount. I said 100 when we started. Now David's saying, I mean, realistically, David, you're probably saying like 25,000. Is that right?
Well, I didn't put a limit on it. I said any amount spent, and it would be outside the budget. Anything that we've approved inside the budget has already been approved. We already know about it. We saw it. We approved it. We voted for it. So it's anything that would be during any fiscal year within the quarter that the executive director, under the first paragraph, as all that was defined, the state director shall maintain ethics, et cetera, under item number 1, shall disclose to the commission any expenditures up to $200,000 that was not approved in the budget and has not been approved by the commission. It's stuff that she had the right to spend. I don't quite know how that's possible, and where the pocket would come from. But anyway, we would know about it. And if there's a question, then good. It then becomes our responsibility because we didn't ask enough questions and draw some kind of attention to it. But transparency would be the minimum issue. Okay, so we didn't approve it, but at least we have the responsibility because we were told about it. So it would be any amount that she spent not in the budget, up to 200,000 as purely transparency disclosed every quarter as a separate item in the agenda before the commission.
Okay, well then it's whatever's not in the budget then.
Yeah.
Okay.
That the
Right.
executive director spends. Yeah.
All right, the executive director spends that's not in the budget. Is everybody?
Yeah.
So that would include what was in the administrative budget that was not in the administrative budget for her to spend, or any other budget.
Yeah, it would be the free money issue, I guess. I don't know from a budget perspective how you follow that and where that would go, and that would be why it needs to be disclosed. The question would come, well, where did that money come from? Where did that $175,000 that went for this particular thing? Where did it come from? Oh, it came out of that budget. Okay, all right, and then the 135 that was spent for this particular item, that came out of that budget. All right, and how were the adjustments made in their budgets that we approved? Well, it would be questions like that, as well as what was the money spent for. So, but a disclosure would simply say disclose. I mean, if anybody wanted to ask questions about it, they could. If nobody wanted to ask questions, then they don't ask questions.
I'm fine with that. We can present that to the commission and see what they want to do.
Okay. Gary, I mean, does that make sense?
He obviously
It
doesn't
makes
agree.
sense. Do I like you said, I don't understand. I'm not sure how any money can be spent outside the budget. So I'm not sure exactly what this refers to.
So,
But what I don't want to have happen is I don't want to get a report. We spent $200 on a pizza party for the staff. We spent $1,500 on office supplies. We don't need to have oversight over the basic functions like that, which should be included in the budget, just in generalized, administrative costs.
Yeah, that's a little bit of confusion I have, David, is what exactly could you spend if it was not in the budget at all? If it was not, I mean.
Well, you could, if it were by quarter, it could simply be, let's suppose a party event plus a number of other things. You could simply say office expenditures for various functions $3,700. I mean, that's it. It's a line item. It's a line item. And then if it's a big enough, with me, when I see line items, I kind of roll down the list. And if something pops out, you say, there was an expenditure here for office parties for $122,000. Well, obviously something's wrong with that, so, so anything that's a small item, well, that's fine. And it's every quarter. So it might only be $422, but it's 6 words, office parties or office events or whatever. So there's nothing there to ask questions about. And it might be 1 page longer. It might be a half page longer or whatever. If we see it's going to be burdensome to make a list, the executive director could certainly come back to us and say, this is becoming burdensome to put down these fine items. And I would like to hear that. I mean, go ahead and let's write it up as E. And if we have to put a lower limit, anything lower or greater than $10,000 or something like that, okay. But at least the big ticket items are covered if there are any. I don't even know if there are going to be any. That's why we're doing a disclosure. We can look at it and just kind of see.
Well, it's fine with me. We can do it. We can do it to 10,000, or we can do it. I mean, it was just whatever number. I just thought we should come up with a number so that it wasn't every dollar like $50. But I just think we should come up with some number, whether it's 10,000, 5,000, or what.
Well, this is typically why most offices have a small cash fund in the drawer. They've got $100 that they will use for some Christmas event or whatever. But in most businesses, I suspect when things are being reported, if it has a certain amount of integrity demand to it, it is a line item. I mean, there are things that go on in my law office. I can't believe how our bookkeeper, who is an outside bookkeeper, demands receipts for everything. I mean, pins. She'll say, where the receipt for. That goes down in a full disclosure form that's part of her bookkeeping. And the limited staff I have really doesn't complain. I mean, they know they're supposed to keep a receipt, and then that goes to the bookkeeper. Disclosure should be the least of our problems and issues. It's just a list. So if somebody wants to come up with a minimalist number or not include office expenditures, that's fine. Leave out office.
How about let's say 5,000, David?
Oh, well, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
let's 5,000 or and up to 200,000 shall be disclosed to the commission on a quarterly basis.
There you go. That's good.
If it's not already contained within some budget.
Yeah, if it's not already contained by pre-approved items in the budget.
I don't want our executive director wondering what she's and worrying about if she doesn't disclose that she spent $250 on paper clips, that she's going to get in trouble.
Well, we just said it was 5,000.
I'm just saying.
That
addresses that. That addresses that.
Don't give me that.
Well, I mean, I am going to give you that because that's my concern. So, I mean, that's and going to 5,000 helps with that. But whether it's $5,000 or $10,000, my concern is I want our executive director to not feel like if she moves left, right, or center, that she's going to get electrocuted. That's my concern.
Well, I mean, only she can answer that.
Well, if it turns out to be burdensome, then let's have an understanding among the committee and the director who is there, that if she will simply talk to us about it, that this is such a burden to keep records on whatever. And let's see if we can correct it. But I thought let's start at 5,000 and see if that doesn't eliminate the concern.
Okay, that's good. I'll agree to that. We'll go with 5,000. So basically, going round and round and round, basically what we did was, instead of me doing 100,000 like I was going to do, we went down to 5. So all we're saying is any expenditure over $5,000 will be disclosed on a quarterly basis to the commission,
If it's not already in the budget.
if it's not already in the budget, which that part concerns me because I don't know how you do that. But okay, but it's a lot better than it was, in my opinion, so that's fine.
Thank you.
Would it be helpful?
All right.
You guys,
What?
Dr. Fry wants to clarify something.
I'm just wondering, since it's a new policy, we're happy to be transparent. I support transparency. However, this is something that we haven't reported before, and I don't know, honestly, do not know the lift. It will be on our finance and IT teams to pull those data and get it in a presentable form. I'm wondering if it would be helpful if we were to do like a proof of concept and show you what such a report might look like, so that we had some meaningful data on this is, this was the internal.
Well, may I just say, I'm having trouble with this. I'm having trouble with anybody saying that it's going to be something difficult to report how much money was spent, and we're talking potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. This should be like, sure, it's a piece of cake. Anything above 5,000, of course. We had to go through some process to write a check for it. To put it on a sheet of paper for the commission in line item does not need a proof of concept. It's a list. And I'm kind of, I don't comprehend any resistance to transparency. That really does bother me. And so I'm making the motion that we adopt what we just discussed for the last 30 minutes. 5,000 up to 200,000 is my recommendation and my proposal and my motion, and that be reported to the commission on a quarterly basis, period. And if it becomes burdensome for the 5th time, then tell us about it next month when you're coming up with the list and you say, "Oh, this is so hard to do." Well, we'll come back to the to this committee and tell us why. We don't need a level of more proof to produce a list that's a transparency list. So that's my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I will second that, and I will look at Ms. Fry's, if she wants me to look at it, I'll be happy to look at Ms. Fry's list before we present it to the rest of the commission for the first quarter. I mean, well, it'd be for the 4th quarter, but well, it would be for November and December.
We will comply with the request, absolutely, and we want to be transparent.
Chairman, there's a motion. There's a motion and a second.
I just seconded the motion, and so if there's no objection, then it passes, and that's what we're going to present to the commission to change this policy to say, and it'll be on section, instead of under C where I had it, which is, you're right, you're absolutely right, it's not the right place. It would be under, and on the first page. I mean, on the second page where it says the state director shall, it'll probably be the 2nd or 3rd one of that.
Do you want it to be number 1 or number 2?
I'd say number 2.
And Colin, you want to read back to him what?
Basically, all expenditures over 5,000 up to 200,000 must be presented to the commission every quarter within the current fiscal year that is not in the budget and not approved by the commission
Previously.
That's it.
Thank you. Okay, moving on.
Thank you.
I'm sorry that took so long.
My fault. I'm sorry, but
No, it's not.
Thank you.
It's fine. I'm just responsible because I'm the chairman, but it's fine. I'm no problem. I'm just glad it got straight. I just wanted to do something with it and we got it straight. So, I felt like we should. I wasn't saying I was. It was based on the committee's approval. But the next item on the agenda is under retention by the policy committee. I'm going to go through this very quickly. This is just next quarter's, the policies we're going to go through. Anybody can read those, so there's no reason for me to go through those in the interest of time. Section 1 is what we're going to retain. Section 2 is what's referred to another committee, which is the finance committee. There's a cost principle for grants is going to be referred to the policy committee. I mean, to the finance committee, I'm sorry. And then the third is all the AIDS policy and the other policies that are going to be referred to the staff. I looked over all those policies and I think they still should be referred to staff. I have no problem with any of them. Just for the record, being referred to staff, and like the social sexual development and the behavior and all that. If there's no objection to any of that, we're going to move on to old business. I'm going to give it 3 seconds. If anybody wants to change any of that, let me know. Thank you. We're going to old business is next, and it is voluntary contribution. Old business is next under AS 200-04 DD. We're going to be talking about the voluntary contributions and donations. We made some corrections to this last time we met, and we wanted to bring it back to us to make sure it was straight. As far as I know, it is. There's just one thing that I wanted to clarify, and it was that, but I think it's already been clarified that who was going to give the receipts was the for the donations was the executive staff. I mean, was the regional office, correct? Isn't that what it says? We changed that to Lori.
Right, we changed that all donations will be forwarded to either the director of finance at central office or through the finance director at the regional center.
Okay. The only other one that I thought was significant was I mean, anybody can read this, but what I was saying was significant was that I thought was significant was that we changed to remove the words as able to if requested, the general counsel. So I thought that was a positive change to that. And that's the last correction that we made on this. I'm sorry, I was on another thing. I was just talking about, I'm going to the other policy. I'm sorry. If we don't have any other objection, we're gonna approve the voluntary contributions policy as we wrote it, as we corrected it. Is there any objection to that? Hearing none, we're moving on to the one I was talking about, I'm sorry, which is the individuals involved in the criminal justice system. That's the next item we're doing today. That's the next policy we're doing today, which we've made some corrections to, and we're making a few others. Anybody can read what those corrections are. I'm sure you already have. The only thing about that one I was going to ask, and I was actually going to ask Gary this one, since you're the criminal defense attorney in our group. Under that policy, it says that the person, I got to get it in front of me because it's not on this note I got here where I'm at.
Are we on page 80?
We're on
Yes.
under tab 3.
Yes,
The-
Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you.
On page 80. We just approved the voluntary contribution, so now we're on page 80. And I was just going to ask, about under B right there, it seems like to me there should be something different other than where it said under B on page 81, where it says if a criminal charge against an individual is serious. Shouldn't there be some way to clarify the word serious there? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me to say serious.
I'm sorry,
I mean,
Barry, I'm
what's
not
serious?
seeing. I got you.
Do what?
Yeah.
How should we clarify that word, you think, in that policy? Gary?
I mean,
because it just seems
pretty
like
much
serious
anything.
could be, depends
Yeah.
on who you're talking to.
Right, sure. I mean, there's.
To me, being arrested for anything would be serious, but for a real criminal, serious would be anything you're going to be in jail for over a year for. So I mean,
Sure.
what?
And then there's an entire category of crimes that the legislature has defined as serious, which are typically the very high level stuff. So
I'm not sure if Steve is still on, but I think what the policy is trying to say in number 1 is that sometimes people are incarcerated and are not able or allowed to post bond, right? It uses the word, if it's so serious that they are unable to post bond, but it's not really trying to determine whether or not. Right, it's really law enforcement's decision about whether or not, or the judge, at the facility. Really what number 1's trying to get at is if the person is detained and they can't post bond, then we should, a case manager, a QIDP, or any other DDSN employee shouldn't go trying to bond them out. But it would be appropriate for them to facilitate with other people to post bond and provide supervision after release.
I mean, the language is a little bit vague. I mean, it could simply say if the individual is incarcerated in a local detention facility upon arrest and not able or allowed to post bond,
You want us to change it like that?
It could say that. I mean,
Okay.
again, you can be denied bond on a simple assault and battery, which is, a 30-day magistrate court case if the magistrate decides not to.
If the individual
all sorts of situations.
incarcerated.
So, I mean, that first, I mean, it's sort of generalized language, but.
Yeah, we can change that.
I would think that'd be a lot better. The only other thing a couple of things I was going to bring up about this is where it says it is appropriate for the board provider, DDSN regional center, to advocate for the incarcerated person to be assisted legal representation.
Yep.
Should that be? I mean, whenever we were doing the healthcare consent policy, we were way down the list as to how many people would be before we get involved with healthcare consent stuff. So shouldn't there be a list of things here that we wouldn't be involved with unless they couldn't get any other people involved? I mean, shouldn't we be far down that list before we try to get involved with whether somebody gets taken out of jail or not? I mean, we shouldn't be advocating for somebody to stay in or out of jail. I mean, stay out of jail if they've done something wrong. I mean,
I don't think we're trying to get them out of jail. We're trying to make sure that they have access to a public defender, basically, that they have legal representation.
Well, I know, but I mean, that's not for us to decide. That's for their caregiver, or their aunt or uncle or whatever it is. Just like whenever we have just like on the healthcare consent, where we were like 6 or 8 down the list of anybody that would be contacted before. I mean, it was like 7 people to be contacted before we got contacted. And I just think it's the same way here. We should be like the 7th person to be involved with this matter. There should be a lot of other people getting involved before us on this. It's not for us to decide what somebody has, I mean, when they're incarcerated, it seems to me that's a different matter. I mean, that's a entirely different matter to me. I just don't think we should be getting involved with whether they have a public defender or not, unless there's nobody else to do it down the list, unless we're the last ones that can get involved. Not the last ones, but on the same level as our healthcare consent. David, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Steve, do you want to speak to that at all? Are you out
Sure.
there?
Yeah, I'm out here and I'll turn my camera on. Hey, everybody, Steve Von Holland, and I'm the policy guy for this one. The thinking with that was that, that would be kind of part, because case managers, their job is to advocate, in general for their consumers. So we had put that in there of hey, don't post bond. You shouldn't do that, but it would be appropriate as part of your job duties, to make sure that the person has a public defender or has legal representation. Is where the thinking of that was, not that that case manager, would assume responsibility for that, but that would be part of their job to advocate for their consumers.
Well, wouldn't they be contacting other people before us? Is what I'm saying. Isn't there a lot of other people that would be involved in that matter before us?
Hopefully so. Although,
so why couldn't we just say that they would contact whoever they're supposed to contact, and then we'd be seventh down the list or whatever it is?
So I think the difference, I understand, Commissioner Malfors, like your thought process around it, but I think the difference here is in healthcare consent, it's about an action of giving consent. And really all we're saying in number 2, we're not saying that we expect for anybody to make a decision for the person or, get the person out of jail. Basically what we're saying is it's appropriate for you to advocate for that person to know and help them figure out how to get legal representation. And from a case management perspective, different families need different levels of assistance. Like some families might be very astute to the criminal process, and the case manager might not really be doing anything at all because the family might already know that they might have their own family attorney, right? But there are some families who don't really know what to do. And I think the point in the directive is just for the case manager to know and be aware that people have a right to legal representation and to kind of inform the person and their family that they have that right, not for them to make any decision about who their attorney is going to be or anything like that. Does that kind of help a little bit?
Well, I just think that needs to be clarified then, because that is not the impression I got from reading that policy. So, if that's what it needs to say, then that's what it needs to say, not what it says.
Okay.
It needs to say something much more vague than that.
We'll try rewriting it so that it makes, like, we use the word advocate because that's the word we use for, helping people understand and get information, but we'll figure out a way to say it a little differently and let you look at it again.
It shouldn't be advocate. That should not be advocate at all. Because we don't need to be getting involved with these kind of matters, in my opinion. But anyway, that needs to be reworded somehow. And I guess we'll talk about it another day,
Okay.
But
Yeah, we'll take
the
another
other thing I was
stab.
going to ask is it appropriate for this on number 5? Is it appropriate for us to be involved, continue for 3 months if this individual is in a correctional facility? Or should that be 1 month, or because in that Department of Corrections responsibility once they're in a facility? Why does it say 3 months there?
Yeah, well, when they are incarcerated, it is. We can't really get in there and do case management. All their needs are met for at that point. But we've had 3 months on there because that seemed like a 90-day time frame would be appropriate in that case.
And by all of their
long,
needs, and by all their needs, you mean none of their needs is the way it happens in the state.
Well,
You're right, Commissioner.
Yeah, so
Say what now?
so typically within 90 days, you're going to have a person transitioned maybe from intake into a more permanent setting.
Right.
Particularly during intake, there tends to be a period of time when nobody in the Department of Corrections has any real clue about what a person's specific needs might be. And it might be very helpful to have a case manager who can at least assist with that. That period, again, it can vary widely, but with COVID, it's a little bit longer, but 90 days is about average, I would say, somewhere between 45 and 90 days on average. So that number to me makes sense for that transitional period. Much more so than 30 days. And in 30 days, they may barely make it down to reception and evaluation under some circumstances.
Yeah, and I think the purpose of that, at least initially in this directive, was to make sure that when people kind of got where they were going, that we at least provided information about the person, what their disability is, what medications they're taking, why they're taking them, but we put some limits on it so that we didn't have case managers following people along while they were incarcerated for 5 years, right? So we kind of said,
Well, obviously not.
we'll leave case managers in there for 90 days, and then we can go back and pick them up 90 days prior to discharge so that we can prepare them for, reentry into.
So there's no problem when we go fee for service. There's no problem with them getting paid for that services, even though they're incarcerated.
Under state funded case management, they can be paid for that service. It's an allowable case management service in our state funded service. We can't bill Medicaid for that, but.
So we can't, that would be all state funds would go for that.
Right, and we have been doing that for, quite some time.
Well, whether that should be or not is another story. I guess I'll let it go. If nobody else has an objection to that, I would just think it should be 60 days or less. But anyway, the last thing I was going to mention was under number 6, where it says, if such an agreement is suggested, DDSN Office of Clinical Services and or DDSN Office of General Counsel must be immediately notified. I was just going to say, well, sorry, that's DDN. That's talking about DDSN Office of General Counsel. Okay, that's fine. I'm sorry. I won't say anything about that. Sorry. That's fine. Okay, moving on. Does anybody have anything else about this policy they want to bring up? I've spent enough time on it. I'm sorry.
So do you want, so with that policy, do you want us to put together those 2 changes and get your approval to send it out for public comment, or do you want it to come back to the committee?
Well, we can get it sent out. We can make those changes and get it sent out for public comment, and then we can bring it back. I mean, we can bring it to the commission in December, or if we meet in December, we can talk about it then. But if we don't meet in December, we can bring it to the commission in December, and I'll just look at it close and see what I think of it, and we can send it to you can just send it to the policy committee.
Okay.
First, before you send it out to the commission.
Okay.
And I'll let you know if I have a problem with it. Just remind me that we need to look at what that section is that I was looking at, because I just don't like that at all. I think that's anyway. All right. That's all I had on this directive. If there's no other, we have one other very important thing to do today. So if I don't hear an objection, we're going to approve this as with the corrections and then send it out to public comment.
Well, you talk about, we're still on the 5031.
Yes.
The criminal justice. I mean, I would object to not even knowing. I mean, I'll just say flat out, the language as it's written, I would approve. So I don't, until I see what is rewritten there on 2, I would object to passing it at this time.
Well, we can bring it back to us, but I just don't like the way number 2 is written right now at all. So I guess, David, you need to decide this. I don't think we need to be advocating for anybody that that's being incarcerated. I think we need to get that. Somebody else needs to be involved with that, not us. People are incarcerated for reasons, not because they have a bad hairdo.
So are you suggesting that they come back to us at the next meeting with something revised about the advocacy?
Yeah, what I'm saying is,
concern?
what I was going to say was, yeah, about the advocacy term and about how they need to be letting other people know that's involved with that person. This is going on before we get involved in it at all, unless they don't have anybody else to get involved for them. We need to put this off on somebody else, just like we do on the healthcare consent policy part, if we can. And if they have nobody else, then we get involved. But we don't get involved unless they have nobody else that can do this. We don't need to be involved with advocating for people who are being incarcerated. I know I'm not a public defender, don't want to be. And I know a public defender wouldn't like what I said, but I don't.
Well, I think Gary, is your question, you're not objecting to them revising it and bring it back to committee, are you?
I would approve the language as it's written. If we get a second one, I'll certainly consider that at that point in time. I have no issue with it as it is written right now, but I would object to approving anything for presentation to the commission when I don't know what language is going to be inserted in place of this.
Yeah, I agree with that. But Barry, can I move that we let staff have this and make whatever revisions they've been hearing with your concerns about the advocacy problem? It sounds like they're trying to. I understand what you're saying, and I kind of agree with that. But let's just modify it, bring it back to committee. Is that okay? Can we do that?
Okay. We'll bring it back to committee before we put it out for public comment. Then I guess.
Yeah, it comes back to us again to look at one more time, right?
Right. And then if y'all just send me how you decide to change it, Lori, and I'll look at it before it comes back to us, and then I'll just see. At least I can just see what it says.
Okay.
Well, I'll see it anyway, because I'll see it before
you'll see it in the packet.
I'll see it anyway. Forget what I said. I'm sorry. All right. Then we're just going to send that back to us then. I don't think there was any other corrections we decided to make. Was it? Okay.
So I just want to say, I want to give you guys an option. I don't know if this is on the table, so this might not be allowable, but we could make the change and send it out to the three of you. And then we could try to get it out for public comment earlier instead of bringing it back to the committee, but that's totally up to the three of you.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
That just might make it go a little faster versus having to bring it all the way back to this committee. And it's really just two changes. It's a little bit of wording in number 1, and then the wording related to advocacy. And I'm just going to be a little more clear in number 2 to say that we're helping people understand that they can have legal representation. That's all number 2 really is about. So
well, yeah, but it also needs to say that other people that we want other people to be involved with whether they have with anything to do with their incarceration before us in a list. That's my point. That's part of my point anyway. It's not.
Yeah, maybe
but
we'll
the
bring it back then, because I don't.
The advocacy is my biggest point, but it ain't just changing that word.
Okay, well then we'll bring it back to the committee, because I'm not sure I know how to do that completely, but we'll talk through it.
Okay. All right.
And if we're moving on to the next matter, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I do have an appointment that's come in that I need to leave the meeting for. I would just state that if we're going on to the next item, which is the voting policy, that I have no objections to that policy as it is proposed, and I would just leave it at that. And with the chair's permission, I will have to leave at this point in time. I apologize.
Well, I'm sorry. It's my fault we took so long today.
No, I have certainly contributed to that. There's no question.
Okay, well, we'll discuss the voting policy next then, and we'll go from here.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Just let the record reflect that we still have a quorum and that David and Barry are still here to do the final voter registration policy. And this was my second most important policy, so I'm sorry that Gary can't be here, but which is why, well, we'll fix that next time.
Yeah, I'm not sure that, that we'll be able to pass this policy anyway. We've got several comments from Commissioner Rawlinson. And
No, we won't be able to pass it. There's some things I want to see about that.
I think it's gonna come back anyway, Gary.
It's gonna come back anyway, probably. It's probably gonna come back to the commission in December is probably what it's gonna do. Right now, I'm just looking for my page. The thing that I wanted to say from what, and it's primarily what Commissioner Rawlinson talked about in her email, but there's a couple of differences, small differences. One is, David, you still with me? David, if you ain't with me, I can't keep going.
I'm sorry, I had my mute on. I'm here.
Okay, sorry. All right, I'm just gonna make sure you was here. Okay, this is the last policy we're gonna talk about today is the voter registration, and I think that this is a prime example of how we can do what I think we should do often as we can, which is to treat those with disabilities like everybody else as much as possible. And I think the voting policy is the number one way, or is one of a number of ways we can do that. So what we're trying to do with this policy is not only is add obviously voter registration and voting in with the same policy, and basically it makes it to where the rules that apply to anybody who needs assistance also applies to those with which we serve. And when I talk about needing assistance, it means that just like it says in this email, it means that those have to be capable of asking for assistance in order to get assistance, and they cannot. The key thing is they cannot get assistance from any DDSN employee or anybody else affiliated with DDSN. The only people they can get assistance from is the people in the people that are working at the polls if they're voting in person, just like anybody else would get. And they must select whatever individual at the polls they want to vote. I mean, they want to help them vote. And then
Barry, are we gonna vote on this now?
Well, we're gonna fix it now. We're gonna work on fixing it now, and we're probably gonna be voting on it next month. But I want to publicly talk about where the corrections need to be made now, because I mean, we have this email we're going by, but I don't want to. It's not exactly what I have. I mean, there's some things about it that I wanted to clarify.
Okay? I don't have the Rawlinson email, and what are we asking clarification about on this? Because isn't the point of this that the policy that we have should be in sync with the code law, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So
and that's basically what we're doing. But I was just going over some things that where it needed to address that. I'm sorry. I forgot. I think I forgot to send you that email.
So my question is, since I don't have the email, why don't we give the email to staff and let them take a look at it and talk to you and see how that could be incorporated? That the theory. I mean, if we go too deep into voting rights stuff, it's going to become a morass that it will take us forever to get out of. I understood that what we were doing is simply making sure that our staff didn't try to exceed or assert themselves in such a way that it exceeded state law and state provisions, and we were simply synchronized with that. So
That's the primary purpose of what we're doing, yes. It's we're just gonna have some clarification in there.
So,
my
go ahead.
So my recommendation would be, since I don't know if Gary has the memo or I don't have the memo, is not to spend 15 or 20 minutes on a memo that I can't look at, but rather turn it over to staff, let them see how they can incorporate it, and be in conversation with you, the chairman, about this, and maybe send us all a proposal that might modify according to the memorandum. If it's going to create a problem, we need to know about it before the next time we meet. But to sort of go over stuff right now when we don't have the material stuff and one of our members is gone is I mean, I can't stay another 30 minutes. So
okay. All right, well, then I just think it's prudent. I just think it'd be prudent that we go ahead and meet in December, and then we'll go over these things then. Because by the December meeting, we'd be able to go through this and the other policy we just talked about. And then we'll just meet. We had thought about not meeting in December, but let's just meet in December to get this done so we can bring it to the commission in December.
Okay.
So that's what we plan to do, Dave, if that's all right with you. We'll meet the second Tuesday in December.
I'm fine with that, and I would suggest that we have a limited agenda, and it be this item. I mean, you're right in the middle of holidays and everything else, and there's no telling what kind of stuff will be going on. I mean, Gary just had something come up where he had to leave, but December can be the busiest time of the year. If we're going to do a December meeting, that we have a limited agenda, the agenda just be for this item, and
well, actually, we'd have two items, if you don't mind. We'd have the one that we talked about. We'd have the one that talks about the incarceration, and we'd have this one, and that's it.
Okay, yeah, just that one, the two old business items to consider.
Okay, that's fine. Well, we won't bring up anything new.
Okay, all right, no new business. So my proposal is that in December we have a meeting on these two issues that we have turned over to staff, and that the memorandum on this current issue, the voting issue, be considered, that they confer with the chairman. And that we have a limited meeting in December to only consider those two issues, unless the chairman chooses otherwise. So I'll leave it to you, whether or not it should be expanded, but you know the intent. So that's my motion. Okay.
No problem. I have no problem accepting that, and it will. That would be the only two things on the agenda. Good. Unless there's some emergency, that's the only way we would do anything else.
That's right. That's right. We'll let you decide if it's an emergency, and you can inform us.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay,
So,
well,
Chairman, does that conclude our?
That concludes our meeting, with the exception of saying that we will be meeting on December, the second Tuesday in December, which is
Commissioner Malfris, could we potentially meet a different day than the second Tuesday in December? We have another meeting that day that the majority of executive staff will be involved in at 3 o'clock. Or if we could do it.
Okay, all right, no problem.
That day.
What day would you like to do? Well, I mean, the first Tuesday is possible. It's just hard for me. But how about the second Monday? That work?
Second Monday. Yes, absolutely. We could do it that afternoon, the 13th instead of the 14th.
Yeah, let me look at my calendar while I got you on the thing here.
December 13th.
Yes.
At what time? 3 o'clock.
We'll ask. Oh no, that's finance and audit. No. Finance and audit's on that Monday.
It is?
What about the 15th? Which is Wednesday, the day after.
I'm fine with a limited meeting. I'm fine.
Or we could do it on the 14th at a different time. We just can't do it at 3.
Well, I mean, it'd be easier if you had one meeting a day. I would think it's hard enough to do these meetings more than one. let's just do I don't have anything on the 15th. Let's just do the 15th. But it'll be a limited meeting. It will not take, I don't think, an hour.
Are we talking at 3:00?
That's usually best for me, but I could do it every time if you need to, David.
I'm fine. I just need to put a time down. What time?
Okay, let's say 3:00 on the 15th.
Is that okay with
and,
staff?
Colleen will send something out later today with that time, just to reserve that time for y'all.
Okay, if that's okay with you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Would staff be kind enough to call Gary or text him or email him about the limited meeting and date, since he's not here? That I don't want that to drop through the cracks, and he not know, and then he's pulling his hair out trying to figure out if we're meeting or not. So if staff would just email him or just make sure that he knows we're set for December 15th, 3:00 for a limited meeting, discuss those two items.
If he's not available, we'll work with you to schedule it at an alternate time.
That's fine. Good. You can do the same with me.
Yeah, that's right. We can do an alternate time if we have to. Yes.
Okay.
But
Okay.
it'll be on the 15th. We can plan on that.
Good.
Even if it has to be morning, we'll do whatever we need to do. All right. All right. Well, then that concludes our meeting. If I'm going to ask you to make a motion to adjourn, David.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you. I second. We're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.